So good evening to all the attendees and participants for the webinar this evening, and greetings for the day to all the attendees who've signed on from out of India, and also to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Akhilesh Thakur, who's the Deputy National Leader, Risk Advisory, Baker Tilly DHC. Friends, welcome to the 61st Analytics Wednesday webinar, which is on data analytics, key to be a trusted advisor. This webinar is brought to you by SAMA Audit Systems and Softwares Private Limited and supported by the Government of Canada Trade Commissioner Service. Now, SAMA has been at the forefront of leading technologies on data analytics. We have Caseware Idea, which is our flagship product for audit and fraud analytics. We have Caseware Working Papers, which is a recent addition to our bouquet of tools and services. We've also representing Alissa, which is a tier 1 financial services company, Lex Comply, which is a legal compliance management tool and solution company. With that brief introduction, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speaker, Mr. Akhilesh Thakur. Akhilesh ji is, as I mentioned, the Deputy National Leader, the Risk Advisory, Baker Tilly DHC. He has over 20 years experience in the field of business consulting and internal audit. He started his career in internal audit practice with a renowned boutique IA firm based in Bombay, joined the Big Four consultancy services and handled specialist internal audit assignments for pharmaceutical, in engineering and agrochemical industries. He was one of the founding members in India for the world's largest independent risk consulting firm. He's actively engaged in developing the internal audit profession and is the immediate past president of the Institute of Internal Auditors Bombay chapter. He is a serving member of the Board of Governors in IA India and IA Bombay chapter, and he's worked on a range of assignments having expertise in internal audit, enterprise risk management, risk consulting, financial process improvement, development of accounting policies and procedures, and finance function stabilization. He's also handled very special projects on cost reduction, revenue optimization, and business consulting assignments. So with that introduction, Akhilesh ji, we are very, very fortunate to have you with us. Thank you for agreeing to speak on this topic, and over to you. I've made you the host. You can begin, sir.
I hope my screen is visible.
It is. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Akhilesh ji.
So thanks, Jairam, for this nice introduction. And I really appreciate IDEA for inviting me to be part of this Analytics Wednesday. I think the whole topic is around data analytics. And in internal audit, we always try to work with the management, the board. And we want to be basically a trusted advisor for them. And that is why this topic is key to be trusted advisor. We have heard a lot that data is new oil. So we churn out the data and then we get the energy or the power. And that power is something which helps us in our professional journey. So with that, I will just start. So what happens? I mean, and I have served in consulting organization for over 20 years now. And this is based on my experience working with various companies and organizations. So when we actually go to the board, I think in many places we get, questions like everything is under control. Is there anything we need to be concerned about? Are you assuring us that everything is fine? Now, these are very broad level questions, and answer of these questions is not easy. Now, to answer these questions, we need to be very clear about the organization. We need to understand what we are actually getting into. Do I actually understand the company? Do I understand their systems, their processes? Do I understand what is going on in the organization? These questions have been there in past and continue to be faced by us even today. Today, we have tools by which we will be able to somewhere get an assurance or a comfort that, okay, we are able to meet the expectation of the management. And to do that, I think these are analytics tools which are there in the market, whether it is IDEA or SAP tool or other tools which we use. So all these tools helps us in answering this question to some extent. As an internal auditor, I'm talking about few years back, our expectation from the management was review control effectiveness, risk management, compliance assurance, ITGC, cybersecurity, which played a big part, SOX and IFC support. Now, these continue to be the areas where internal auditors are responsible, but they also need to identify frauds. So if anything goes wrong in any organization, the first question comes is, okay, what were internal auditors doing? Have they identified these things in past? And variably or invariably, internal auditors are involved in many of these fraud investigations or trying to figure out as to what went wrong. Define preventive control. So it is important. One is identification of something which has gone wrong. The second is how do you prevent it going forward? And that is becoming more and more proactive now. So companies and boards are asking what is it which we are able to do to prevent these things from occurring. Third is provide timely update. Something which happened, let's say 6 months or 9 months back, we analyze it, we go back to the board. It may not be relevant today. So the timeliness of information is important. Dynamic risk analysis. So things are changing. We are living in a VUCA world today. Now, in this kind of scenario, every day something new comes up. So, for example, when COVID came in, it became a big kind of risk for all the organizations. The supply chain had to be completely revamped. We had to think about how to serve your customers in those scenarios. So, understanding if something new comes up, then how is it going to impact the organization on a real-time basis. Continuous control monitoring. This is another thing which is something which boards and management is interested. Now, if we go and tell them that, okay, I think we have done review of, let's say, for so-and-so period, and let's say for so-and-so sample, they may not be interested. What they are more interested is if things are going wrong, if there are anything which is happening which should not happen the way it was designed, then that information should flow and then on a real-time basis. That is where continuous control monitoring comes. ESG, I think this is something which is being spoken a lot across different forums in the boards. It is environmental sustainability and governance. And this is something, again, as internal auditor, we are expected. So our role has actually expanded many folds. As internal auditors, we are still spending a lot of our time on policy, procedure, compliance monitoring, assurance on control effectiveness, control testing. While the recognition we get is typically for cost reduction, performance improvement. So if you go and tell the management or the board that, okay, this is something which we have done and this has resulted in company saving, let's say, X crore of rupees, or we go and tell them that, okay, this is something which has helped them improve. So let's say there is a revenue enhancement which has happened. Those are the areas where they actually recognize that, yes, you have done some wonderful job. While the regular stuff, which is something which we have to do day in and day out, is not being recognized. The second is fraud identification. I think this is something which has become, something which has taken a front seat today. And it is expected that internal auditors will be able to identify fraud and update management on the same. So fraud is something which is happening across the organization, and us as an internal auditor, it becomes very our responsibility to ensure that we are able to detect and report them on that. Identification of new risk is something which is expected from us, whether we are internal auditor which has been outsourced or we are part of the organization. So it doesn't matter. They expect us to report on these aspects. There are a lot of changes in business scenarios which are happening. So digitization is taking place across the organization. So most of the government departments now are working on it. Corporates are doing digitization. Now, digitization comes with its own set of challenges and opportunities for internal auditors. And the way internal audit is being done needs to be relooked at. UPI and payment interface, this is one of the biggest innovations globally, which has changed the entire payment landscape in India. And today, majority of payments are happening through this. So let's say our systems and processes geared up to meet with these. NPAs and frauds. So these are something which are happening. NPAs. So we keep, reading in newspapers about NPAs and frauds day in and day out. So these are certain scenarios again which defines what we are doing. Resources for internal audit. So we work with limited resources. So we have limited budgets. There is shortage of manpower, skill set in the market. Now, this results in us not being able to hire people whom we want to hire. At the same time, there is demand resulting in higher manpower costs. So if you go and try and find out experienced chartered accountants with, let's say, experience of internal audit or IT or forensic, it is very difficult. Other is the cost is very high. And the budgets which we get is not very lucrative. Combine this with the expectation which we have from the board and from the stakeholders is very high. So how do we do it? So one answer is analytics. Now, analytics actually helps us in this. So we can do a lot of regular activities which can be defined through rules, are something where we can use analytics, and something which takes weeks to do can be done probably in few minutes and few hours by using analytics tools. And that will, so our starting point becomes analytical tools through which we get exception, and then we actually start review of those exceptions to perform internal audit. Now, this is something which we are talking about internal audit. There may be scenarios where you are looking at specific kind of objective, which may not be able to codify properly. So in those cases, we may have to think of alternate sources, but this will probably address my 80 to 90% of the work which we are doing is something which can definitely be done using analytics today. Now, let's go. Why do we use data analytics for audit? So it basically enables auditors to analyze organizations' data and see how well controls are operating. We can identify unusual transactions or heightened risk of fraud, and those transactions can actually be culled out from that. And then based on that, we can perform analysis, identify hidden pattern, and figure out what is actually going wrong, or if there are exceptions which needs to be looked at. The important is in data analytics, you are able to cover the 100% of data instead of just the sample. And most of the analytics tools are platform agnostic. So whatever ERP you may be using, you will be able to extract data and use it on the tools. And it helps in providing more accurate result instead of extrapolation, which we have been used to in past. So, for example, in one of the logistic client, we performed a review of their revenue, and they had revenue between 400 to 500 crore annual revenue. And we performed a review where we took sample of probably about 8 to 10 crore. And based on that, we came back that, okay, I mean, the company is losing about 2% of revenue because of XYZ reasons. Now, if you extrapolate that on 10 lakh, or 10 crore, 2% will be 20 lakh rupees. But when we are talking about extrapolating that on 500 crore, then we are talking about a 10 crore kind of number. And that is something which these numbers excites everyone. But today we are in a scenario where we may not need those extrapolation in majority of the cases. And we will be able to do these analysis on a larger set of information. The benefits the data analytics gives for the top management, it is basically a macro level view of exceptions which they can get. They can also be aware about the accounting or operational risk on a real-time basis, and which will have impact on their income and the balance sheet. So if something does not impact their income or the balance sheet, assets or the liabilities, then probably top management is not too keen on looking at those things. So that is where analytics provides that focused view to us. Chief Risk Officer, he can get a lot of confidence and reliability on this data, and it will also help in his compliance efforts. For internal audit department, I think this is where this can help a lot. Data analytics can help you define the rules by which you can trigger the exceptions, critical exceptions which are there. And as soon as you get those triggers, you can actually start analyzing. So it will not be a periodic kind of exercise. It will something which can be done on kind of a real-time basis, and where we will be able to provide a timely update to the management and reduce the losses or frauds if these are happening. This also helps us in improving the processes, helps identification of fraud at an early stage, and potential savings. So when we look at projects where the objective is basically cost reduction or performance improvement, that is where data analytics becomes very critical, where you actually dissect the entire data to understand the pattern and then try and see how we can work on saving the cost. So we'll look at some of the examples going forward. These are typical areas where we can look at data analytics. So if you look at it, these are spanning across all the processes. So for finance, GL analytics or SO analytics, profitability analysis, which has to be done. So these, again, all these rules can be defined based on which these analysis can be done on a very frequently basis. And we may not wait till, let's say, end of the quarter or end of the year to do it. So this is something which can be done, and it can be done without much manual intervention and effort by setting those rules by which it can we can process the data. AR credit analysis, again a very critical component wherein our receivables analysis we have to do to identify, let's say, if there are cases where we may have issues in recovery going forward. So those analysis is again important. So for example, when we talk about, let's say, one customer and there is receivable across multiple invoices from that customer, and we know that he is, let's say, paying the latest invoice, but there is outstanding in the older invoice, then probably someone needs to go and look at as to what has gone wrong. Was there an issue in the old invoice, to figure out if there is an error or there is some service delivery issue, etc. So this is something based on these analysis we can actually take it forward. Time and expense analysis, cash flow analysis, accounts payable similar to accounts receivable to identify vendor related issues, which we'll again discuss later. Human resource, there are various areas like payroll analysis, or we want to figure out if there has been any overpayments, or look at overtime, employee effectiveness, compensation analysis. So these are certain, so we are talking about some standard analysis which can be done. Treasury department, there are depreciation, there's policy compliance, reconciliation, intercompany reconciliation, which can be done. You have tax compliances. Contract is another very important area, both from operational effectiveness point of view, as well as looking at it from a cost saving perspective, to ensure that, okay, whether all the SLAs which have been agreed, so whether those are being met, not met. So these analytics can help us identify that. Supply chain, a very critical process wherein we talk about the spend analytics, which is a very critical area. So when we talk about a lot of cost reduction project, it starts with review of spend analytics. Then discount terms, acquisition strategy, category management, to understand if, let's say, different category of procurements which we are doing, how well we are actually able to manage on the costing and other aspects. So it can be various aspects like your delivery term, discounts, etc. Analytics is backbone when we comes to forensic. So we do a lot of things. For example, FCPA analytics. You have anti-money. FCPA is Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. I mean, this is applicable for most of the companies which have operations in US. And we have anti-money laundering, which is again a very critical process. Fraud investigation, e-discovery. So if there are any disputes happening, and we want to basically identify if there are, so if we can go ahead, let's say, with the filing. So getting some evidence is something which e-discovery does. Text mining and other activities in the fraud analytics. Asset or lease. So here there are a lot of aspects, like whether you want to buy an asset or cost. I mean, take it on lease. What is the total cost of asset? What will be the impact on, let's say, your P&L balance sheet in different scenarios? So this helps us in taking a lot of decision from a compliance as well as cost saving perspective. So these are some of the things which are there. SOD is another area which, so in today's time, there are thousands and thousands of SOD conflict which are there. It is practically impossible to basically do it manually. So that is where analytics is something which has to be used. Sorry, I think there seems to be some overwriting here. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay, so let's, procurement is one area which there are maximum amount of analytics which we keep doing day in and day out. These are some of the sample analytics which we do. So we have like invalid vendor, to find out if vendor is valid or invalid. So by various parameters such as their compliance records, PAN number, GST, etc. So we need to figure out if vendor is actually exists or not, duplicate vendor change or change back. So if there are vendor records which have been changed, and then again after the transaction with that change has been restored, vendor fuzzy logic. So this defining various set of rules by which we will be able to identify if basically there are any correlation between, let's say, vendor and employee, or vice versa. Then we have PO related analytics. So duplicate PO aging analysis, PO and voucher comparison, PO authorization limits, PO and GRN comparison, etc. PO splitting. Again, it's a very kind of regular feature wherein if authority is not with a particular individual, then he may split the PO to make sure that he is able to procure and be compliant with the policy. Payment term modification, pay details is different from the, let's say, vendor master, payment detail mismatch, identical vendor payments. So if there are multiple payments happening of the same amount to the vendor, so looking at those to identify duplicate, duplicate PO, I mean orders beyond PO, quantity and GRN mismatch, invoicing for rejected material. So there are hundreds of analytics in procure to pay, which we do. And majority of these today are happening not by going through each and every detail. So we don't do that. Okay, I mean, we prepare an audit checklist and then one by one we go and check all these areas. So there are rules which have been defined, and while we use the tool, we actually run it, and then based on those results which are there, we move ahead to understand why the exceptions has happened. Is there a valid reason, or there is something else which needs to be pointed? So this is actually resulting in a lot of time and cost saving for us. So just to give you a brief kind of example, I started my career about 20 years back. And I was also there in a Big Four organization. And the rate which we used to charge for internal audit in Big Four at that time, today when it has been almost like 15, 16 years, the rate has not gone up much. But on the other side, the employee costs have multiplied many times. Now, at that time, most of the things were being done manually using Excel sheets. So we used to do analysis on Excel, but that is something which is not viable in today's time. And we are able to, let's say, provide services at a reasonable cost because of analytics. So this is a great kind of tool which we are using on our day-to-day operations. Similarly, the other important area, revenue recognition, wherein we do it for a lot of things like duplicate customer, ghost customer, customer change and change back. Again, very important aspects wherein we can look at, let's say, if there are, so for example, delivery to the customer. So if there is, let's say, change in the address, so the material may not reach to the person whom it should have been while invoicing will be done. And we have noted these instances in past. Shipment difference, so shipping address is different, shipment line order, line mismatch, sales orders to see if the order, the rate at which, let's say, sales has been made. If, let's say, there are sales return, then are they happening at the same rate or not? Again, this was something which used to be part of our testing even earlier, but now it is something which we do by using the tool. Then you have cash receipts related analysis, duplicate cash application mismatch. Now that again, so through analytics, we will be able to figure out if invoices and payments both are outstanding through various tools, let's say matching the numbers and other things. We will be able to identify which are the ones which may actually be outstanding. So a lot of these things can be done through analytics. Then there are other areas, so time and expense, recruitment, reconciliation. So we have things like, identity theft in your HR and payroll. So we came across cases. So I'm talking about a multi-location client where we did analysis of their entire HR database. So when we looked at it across different locations, we noted in several instances, same employee names coming in across different locations. Now, it is possible that you can have different employee names, but then we also noted, since data was there, that these employee had same date of birth, same father name. So these actually helps us identify and create another set of analytics going forward for our clients, where we started using, wherein we started analyzing it to identify identity theft. And when we went on deep dive after those reviews, we noted that, okay, I think this was something which was being done by someone from HR department. Now, these are certain things which typically will take a lot of time, but probably today we are more equipped to deal with these cases. If there is any question anyone have, I will be happy to answer them at any time. Moving ahead, I'm just talking about certain samples which testing which we do using these analytics. So one, we spoke about fuzzy logic. So what happens is, here we define based on the text, what is the percentage matching. And if, let's say, the percentage matching is beyond a particular threshold, then we call out those specific instances and try and then figure out if, let's say, these are the same set of transactions. So in this example, it is basically employee vendor correlation which we are trying to do. And then we are trying to see what is the percentage matching, so that we can actually take it to the next step. Benford Analysis, I think all of us would have read it. And this is a great kind of analytics which gives result in a very quick time. So if you put in all the data, the threshold is defined upper and lower band. And based on that, if you put it, and then you get those exceptions, now you don't have to basically go and look at the entire data, and you can look at all those exceptions. This helps in a lot of scenarios, like split POs, split payment, time and expenses reporting. And this actually helps a lot. Even analytic tools like IDEA and all, this is something which is inbuilt in most of the tools. So this, if we do not use it, probably we'll rely on some samples and then try and figure out if there are any, things are not in line. But when we look at this actually scientifically gives us a lot of insight, which can then further be investigated to figure out what is going wrong. This is basically purchased from different vendors at different rate. Good old days, we used to use our Excel sheets to basically figure out if procurement of same material is happening from same or different vendor at different rates. We probably don't need to spend time on doing that every time we perform the audit. So these analytics can throw out these exceptions in probably few minutes, and then we can actually start working on those exceptions. Same date as, this is again line item having PO same date as invoice date. So this again, so in many cases, what happens is you do not have, let's say, culture in the organization that order will be placed only when, let's say, PO has been raised on the vendor. So in many cases, there is a verbal order which is given to the vendor. And then you see the regularization which happens against those orders. So you may be able to see, let's say, even comparative code being generated. Now, if you typically have the PO and GRN on the same date, it is difficult, and invoice, the vendor invoice, of the same date, it is not possible that you would have followed the entire process to be able to do it. So this tells us that, okay, there are definitely issues which needs to be looked at. Whether these are probably compliance issues where people, although let's say they have followed the process and have not done it through the system, is something which has to be further investigated. But this provides a very good starting point for us. The next is on the logistic payout for an infrastructure company. So this in this particular example, what we did is, so we were doing a review of their the entire procurement for a large infra company which is into construction of dams and bridges. And what we did is we actually started analyzing procurement for the company. Now, what we noted is, so one is when we did analysis of different procurement parameters on a standalone basis at site level. And what we also did is, then we said, let's go a step ahead. We did that at a company level. Now here, when we did the entire review, we noted several anomalies. So this company had different sites in the same state as well as different states. And we use various parameters. So we use, let's say, vehicle numbers. We use several other aspects. So for example, the in and out of the vehicles, what is the vehicle capacity? Because fortunately in that particular organization that was getting captured, the capacity of the vehicle. So we started comparing the same, and we noted that, okay, the same vehicle, we see having records at different sites. Now, if you have one vehicle at different sites, and then the capacity of vehicle at certain places, what bills were received were exceeded the maximum vehicle capacity. The challan number at the sites were in sequence despite material being received at different dates. Now we got a lot of these exceptions, and then we started analyzing. We noted in certain instances there were vehicle capacity which cannot, the kind of vehicle which cannot operate in hilly areas. So there were entries for that high capacity vehicle in those particular location. And then we started and we figured out that this was a very systematic kind of fraud which was being carried out. But this is something possible only if we are able to get this data and are able to analyze it in a appropriate way. Another example is for a logistic company where we did revenue analysis. So what we did is, one is you have the standard contract is there. Based on contract, we can, I will just move out of this slide. So, yeah. So Jairam, you can probably move it out. We can discuss. Hello?
Yes, Akhilesh.
Yeah, you can move out from this.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Done. Perfect.
Great. So another example is of a supply chain company, a logistic company basically. So in logistic, you have various terms. You have like oversized cargo, which goes by volumetric weight. So we did analysis to figure out at a vehicle level in terms of what is the revenue. Are we losing out on anything? And at routes which are very busy, we noted variance at per vehicle revenue, similar kind of vehicles. And then we actually deep dive further to understand why these variances were there. And we noted several instances where volumetric weights were actually not getting captured, resulting in company losing on the revenue in several cases. Now, again, this is something which we looked at the data, we analyzed the data, and then these things came out. So some of these things are kind of a systematic, kind of standard analysis which you can do. For that, I don't think a lot of time needs to be put in. But when it comes to specific kind of industry-specific kind of issues, then that is where we need to put a lot of effort to identify specific parameter which needs to be used for the analytics. And I think end of the day, analytics perhaps is a great tool. And as an auditor, what we have done is we have tried to use it to tell management that, okay, we have done this and this is what the outcome is. This is the amount of saving which we have been able to give to the organization, or these are certain things which have been prevented because of XYZ activities which we have done. Now, these things could not have been possible had we not used some of these tools, because like every other organization, we also face challenges in terms of people. So one is we are not able to hire a lot of people. The second is there is a lot of churn in consulting. So we have to depend on these tools to be able to make sure that we are able to service our client appropriately, and data analytics tools has helped us a lot in that. So with that, I will just take a pause. Any question, any comment, please feel free.
I think I would request everyone that if you have any comments, queries, please ask Akhilesh, because it's a good opportunity to ask him. It was a wonderful presentation with so many practical examples. Confidentiality permitting, whatever he could, he has tried his best to, open out and give examples. So any comments on this?
So there's
yes,
one question on YouTube.
Yeah, please ask, Jairam.
So Akhilesh, the question on the YouTube SAMA channel is, SAMA Audit channel is, in your opinion, when these analytics are developed by, let's say, a corporate internal audit team, what is the right time for them to transition those analytics to the front line, that's the stakeholders, so that they can run the analytics?
I think it's a very, very good question, I would say. These analytics which we develop, I would say internal auditor is not the owner of these analytics. It is the organization analytics which are there. So when we look at it, the objective is that these analytics should help organization in improving the compliance, the control culture. And for that, if we know that, okay, their analytics has been developed and it is working effectively in the interest of, the organization, and to make sure that it helps improve the control within the organization, it should be actually transitioned to the process owner across organization immediately. I do not see that, okay, unless we are trying to test it out and then see that, okay, there are any errors and it needs to be improved further. That is something assurance which internal auditors needs to take. And once they are confident about it, it is important that it gets transitioned to the operations team. So they don't need internal auditor to come and tell them that, okay, this problem has happened here. and they also can actually go and figure out what is the root cause of the issues and then take timely action on that.
Good. I believe there's a question which is in Zoom. There's a question in Zoom, Akhilesh ji. Can you suggest data analytics useful for statutory audits for a medium-sized audit firm with 50 staff members?
Okay, I think if I'm wrong, I mean, not wrong, we are talking about small, medium-sized firms using data analytic tools. I would say, if you look at in today's environment, trying and developing analytics in-house is difficult for anyone. Now, if you look at the cost of human resource cost vis-a-vis the cost which you have to pay to acquire a tool, it is always better to acquire a tool and run it. When you acquire a tool, what you also get is hundreds of those standard queries which are being used by various firms can be used by your firm also, irrespective of the size. So it helps us in improving the quality, and it helps us in making sure that we are able to perform our duties as an auditor. So whether it is internal auditor or statutory auditor, it is something which helps all of us. So I would say that it is not that what kind of analytics we are using. If we have capability, if we can develop specific queries, it is, I think that is the best scenario. And it may have to be done for specific industries. So for example, when we talk about, let's say, oil and gas, unless we have some standard tool for that particular industry, let's say from a revenue assurance point of view, we may have to create some specific kind of scripts to get the appropriate result. But otherwise, standard tools is something which I would recommend.
Great. So go ahead. Then I think there's one final question on YouTube.
Then please ask that question.
Sure. So it's a very interesting question, and it's probably come from a chartered accountant practitioner. The question is, are you an advocate of monetizing analytics to clients where you are not doing audits? Because naturally, if you, I'm kind of explaining the question, because if you try to pitch analytics to a client where you're doing risk-based internal audit services, they'll say, take this within part of your scope and they won't pay you for it. So the question which has come on YouTube is, can you monetize it separately as a separate service vertical, and how do you go about doing it?
So creating analytics for clients is already a service which is being provided by us and many other firms. Important here is, do we have the kind of people and skill sets to be able to do it? So typically there are many large organizations who are taking support both from Big Four, we are also doing it, to create, because they also have that challenge of people and skill sets. So we are helping them on creating those specific queries, test it, and then provide handover to them. And these are actually very good tools today. Going beyond, we also see some of these analytics coming as a platform, as a service. So you may also be able to, so if you want to, let's say, run an analytics just once, you may pay a very small amount, upload the data on that particular portal, and then get the analytics out. So that is something which has not, as of now, taken up in a big way. But that is one area which may come up going forward. So monetization is pretty much on cards, and it is happening as we speak about it today.
I think wonderful. You know what, this question is really wonderful, because what we find in in the company, I just would like to add to what Akhilesh said was that CA firms in the country have created separate verticals, analytic verticals, which are rendering services to clients in the country and even abroad. In fact, all tools, they are using a variety of tools. But yes, with IDEA also, we know at least more than 20 large and medium-sized firms which are doing analytics for clients in the country. Because we know about it directly because they have bought licenses from us. But there are many firms which are using variety of tools to do consulting on analytics for organizations, for especially for their internal audit and finance departments, because that is where there is a need for a range of objectives to be macros to be made, tests to be made and run on a regular basis. There's one more question: which are the most popular tools in the market today, Akhilesh?
I think Deepji, you will be the best person to answer.
Okay. What I will say is that there are. I'll name all the tools. There's IDEA, there's ACL, there's Power BI, there's Alteryx, there's Tableau, there's Python, which is being used a lot by organizations, from CA firms to organizations. And they initially, what we have seen is they buy one analytical tool, they use it, they graduate to 2, 3, 4, because on different platforms, on different, as per the different needs, you may use different tools. So as an organization graduates to a maturity level, they keep using different tools or maybe two tools together. For example, people use IDEA with Python together. They use IDEA with SQL together. They'll use IDEA with Tableau together, and so on. So and many of these tools have got ODBC, which connects to other tools. So they talk to each other. So I think that's the beauty of what is happening today. What is important is to use analytics. I think what is it? IDEA, ACL, Power BI, Tableau, Alteryx, Arbitrage, Click. That is what has been written. Yes. So, and many more. There are many more. These are some of the tools which can be explored by people who are there today on the platform. You can go out and look at each one of them and see what's being used, what your peers use, what your other colleagues use, which is easy to use, and how you can use it. Any more questions? No. Okay.
Nothing on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. So I think if you permit, Akhilesh, then I would like to end the session. Jairam, if you permit, I'll
Please
okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Great. So I think thank you very much to our esteemed speaker for today, Akhilesh. A wonderful, a very simple presentation, application oriented, where any person from a practicing firm or from a department, internal department or a finance department can go out and start applying. The simple thought has been given by Akhilesh, but a very powerful thought. So thank you very much, Akhilesh, for such a powerful, simple presentation, because it's always difficult to present ideas in a very simple fashion. Thank you once again for sparing your valuable time and to be with us, to spare time and to be with us and share your thoughts. Thank you very much to all the participants who joined in. We find there were 18 participants here and there were another more participants on YouTube. So we had a good attendance today. So looking forward to the next Wednesday to all the participants. A very big thank you to the participants and to Akhilesh once again. And see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepji and Jairam. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. Thank you.